What happens when a member of your love triangle is the ghost of your love interest's deceased husband? What if only you could see him, and he was hell-bent on making sure his wife never moved on? What would you do? Well, if you're anything like Hazuki and Natsuyuki Rendezvous, you ain't afraid of no ghosts. If you're Hazuki, you declare war. Natsuyuki Rendezvous is an 11-episode anime series based on a 4-volume manga by Haruko Kawachi. It is romance/supernatural/drama and is a very good anime. I was surprised. I don't usually watch very many romance anime, but this one sort of drew me in. I'm very glad I did because it's now one of my favorite series. This series doesn't waste any time getting right down to business. Within the first few minutes of the series, which is narrated by the main character Hazuki, you find out about what the main plot's going to be about. Hazuki has a daily routine. Every day, he goes by a certain flower shop which is owned by a lady named Roka. He buys a potted plant, chats her up a bit, then goes home. Well, it turns out that Hazuki doesn't even really like plants. He's just going by there so that he can talk to this woman. Hazuki lets the audience know that he has feelings for Roka, and as luck would have it, that night, Roka puts up an ad on the shop door that she needs part-time help for the store. Naturally, Hazuki jumps at the chance, and he's hired. Now, initially we're introduced to Roka as this happy-go-lucky, nice girl who owns this flower shop, but as the series goes on, you'll find out she's not quite that way. A few months pass after Hazuki is hired, and Roka and him don't really seem to be all that much closer than they were before. Then one day, one of Roka's workers is getting married, so she's leaving the shop, and Roka decides that she's going to throw a going-away party for this person. She asks Hazuki to come over the next morning to help her set up, and he agrees. So he comes, and he's led into her apartment. What he sees then is really where the story begins, because he sees this man in his boxers, and okay, so he automatically assumes that, oh, this is her husband or something, you know, she lied about not being with anybody. But the first thing this guy asks is, are you in love with Roka? And, you know, Hazuki isn't going to answer, of course, but he storms out, mad at her, like not telling her what's going on. And this is where the story really begins. Now, Hazuki isn't going to let Roka know that he's affected by this, so he goes to the party that night, and at some point he decides, okay, he needs to smoke, so he sneaks out to the balcony. Who should be there but the guy that he saw in the apartment earlier? Now, of course, he's like, oh man, I don't want to do this, but he goes over there and they start chatting, and of course Hazuki can't help himself, and so he eventually asks, who are you? He says, oh, well, I'm her husband. At least I was when I was alive. Because that's right, this guy that Hazuki saw is actually Roka's dead husband, the ghost of Roka's dead husband. His name is Atoshi, and well, he just wants to know if Hazuki's into his wife, you know, because he's still attached and he doesn't want to let go, which is like later explained, but you have to watch it. It's better if you watch it, you know. I don't want to spoil, but of course Hazuki is like freaking out because Atoshi basically sticks his hand through Hazuki's chest to the other side, and that's how he proves that he's a ghost. And Hazuki eventually learns to accept this. I mean, it doesn't really become an issue after this one instance. Then Hazuki goes back inside, and, you know, they continue the party, and then he leaves. Now, it's important to note two things about their initial meeting. One, Atoshi explains that he still wants to make Roka happy, and two, he asks Hazuki if he can borrow his body, to which Hazuki flatly tells him to go to hell. Now, the next day, Hazuki comes back to work, right, and he meets Roka's sister-in-law, the sister of the brother. She's named Miho, and she's going to be helping out once in a while. She explains that it's Roka's birthday the next day, so Hazuki sees this as a chance, you know, to, like, take her out, like, under the pretense of that. So they decide to go to lunch, Roka and Hazuki, and it starts to rain, and while it's raining, you know, Hazuki shares an umbrella with her, and they start talking, and it comes around to her husband stuff, like how her husband had a weird attitude about it, like he was dying, and he's like, when I die, divorce me, get rid of my stuff, move on, you know, blah blah blah. And she like he didn't really consider my feelings about it. Well, so Hazuki makes a crack, you know, like, oh well, here's an idea, you should move on because his feelings were important. He wanted you to move on, so you should have an affair with me. And she like brushes off, oh, you're just flattering me, you know. But then he's like, no, I'm serious. So they go the rest of the way in silence to the restaurant. They get there, eat in silence, and she starts crying for some reason. And he's like, what did I do? What's wrong? She's like, do you really like me? And he's like, yeah. And like, nothing else is said about it after that, and they go back to the shop. Now you remember that I said previously that Ruka appeared to be happy and go lucky, but she really has some issues, and it was during that conversation in the rain under the umbrella that we really start to get the sense that she's emotionally damaged, like she hasn't quite moved on from his death. So, you know, after the dinner, like, nothing is said about it, and they seem to go back to normal, but then, like, Hazuki is walking back to the store, and he sees Atsushi, which, by the way, Atsushi can't leave the store, like, he can only be inside the store, so if they, like, leave, he can't follow them. So Atsushi is like, you have feelings for her, don't you? He's like, I'm gonna steal your wife one day, dude. Like, he basically just says that, you know, I'm gonna steal her. There's like no way I'm gonna let some dead guy beat me out, you know. And that's basically the plot around this series. Like, from here, it's basically about Hazuki, you know, trying to get Roka to forget about Atsushi, you know, and he keeps telling her how he likes her. You know, eventually she gets sick though, and Atsushi sees it, right? And he has to go somehow contact Hazuki to like save Roka because she's very sick, like high fever and stuff. And he does, and he cares for her, and then she agrees to go on a date with him, you know. She begins to see him for what he is, you know. And then, yeah. All the while, mind you, Atsushi is trying to interfere. He'll, like, float in front of her while he's talking, like, put her hands in front of her face, like, make faces, you know. And if Hazuki reacts, Roka's gonna think he's weird, because Roka cannot see Atsushi, remember? Okay, so eventually they go to a date on this amusement park, which Atsushi had taken her to before he died, and they seem to have an okay time. I mean, they start talking and stuff, and then before they leave, she says something that makes Hazuki sort of depressed, and he gets drunk, and not knowing what he's really doing, he agrees to let Hazuki take over his body. And this traps Hazuki's spirit in this picture book type world, which will be explained, but I don't want to spoil it because it's very important that that part not be spoiled if you want to enjoy the story. But it's revealed that if Hazuki doesn't regain his body in a certain amount of time, he himself will die. Now, Atsushi is trying to like mess with Hazuki's body, like cuts his hair, like puts goofy clothes on, like trying to sabotage him basically. And you know, that's it. I'm not going to tell you how it ends, alright? I don't want to spoil anything. Let me just say that the ending will have you on the edge of your seat. You're going to be wondering how this is going to end, what's going to happen, who's going to end up with Roka. You're going to be wondering. And that's a good thing. When it comes down to the logistics of this series, I've got to say that the visuals are extremely high quality. Like, flowers become and plants for that matter, and a lot of other things actually, but they become symbolic in this series, and they mean something, and it's done to a greater effect because of the high quality of the visuals. It's definitely a series that's pleasing to the eye. You can't really deny that once you see it. I think you'll agree. The characters, though, it's very interesting what I found about this series. There are only 4 main characters. Like 5 characters you know the name, but that one leaves after the first episode. That's the one that was getting married. You have your main characters, which is Hazuki, Roka, and Atsushi. And you have like the sister, which she's like more a supporting character, but each of these characters is so well fleshed out. Like, you see them develop, you know what makes them tick, you see into their mind. And I think that's because it's kind of amazing that they were able to make this series work with just 4 characters. And it's to their benefit because you really get to know these characters and attach, and you want to know what happens to them. For those of you wondering if this is one of those series that doesn't really have an ending, like a lot of romance does, like they don't really resolve anything, that's not the case. This has a very specific story that it sets out to tell, and it does that. It wastes no time, there's no filler, it's nothing. It just tells a story that it's there to tell. And you'll enjoy it, I think, because of that. you can appreciate that, I think, a lot, because a lot of series aren't like that. It's a shorter series. It comes in at 11 episodes, so you can easily marathon it in 1 or 2 sittings, which I would suggest, because I was watching it when it was simulcast, and it was torture sometimes waiting for the next episode. You know how that is. I would recommend this. I hope you would enjoy it. Thanks for watching, I guess. This is my first review, so please be kind. And feel free to comment in the comment section below if you've seen this or you have any questions about it. Thanks.